and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan, and I will say the same thing I say every year when making this video. This is the one FPL Mate video you do not want to miss each season. It is going to be super useful for you guys. A lot of work has gone into it, and we're going to give you the full lowdown for the rest of the season as to what is going on with double game weeks, blank game weeks, and chip strategy as well. So guys, if you do enjoy and appreciate the work that has gone into this one, make sure you do drop a like. Do subscribe if you're new around here, because we will be doing more follow-up videos to this one as we narrow in, as more information becomes available. We can really close down on those chip strategies. So yeah, make sure you've got notifications on so you don't miss a thing. So here it is, the FPL calendar for game week 22 to 38, or as I like to call it, chip season. This is the chip season category for this year. We have got to fill it up with all of the information that we have at our disposal right now. Now guys, we are going to suggest at the end of this video when are the best times to use your chips, but this is not going to be a case of telling you the one chip strategy to use. It's going to be different depending on who you are, and I think as we get more information, we might be able to kind of discount some options, and you know, maybe more options will come up as well, and we'll go through that. But the most important thing is that we give you all of the tools that you guys need to start planning your chip strategy now, because it is important that you do start thinking about it now rather than later. We do need to start planning this thing. So we're going to go through that, and we are going to suggest, we might suggest one chip strategy at the end, but that time will come. So before we do anything else, we need to look at this calendar and identify a few key dates. Now, the first interesting game week is game week 29, I think, because we've got an international break that happens immediately after our weekend fixtures of game week 29. So as soon as the weekend is over for game week 29, it's going to be an international break. Teams and players will go off to their international camps, and they will start playing international football there. So there's going to be no opportunity for a double game week in game week 29. We can't. There are international games happening there, so it's just not going to happen. Now, game week 30 and 31 are interesting as well, because they are two game weeks within the space of one calendar week. So this is not a double game week. This is just two individual game weeks placed within one calendar week. So you will have the game week 30 fixtures take place at the weekend as normal, but then during the midweek of game week 30, well, we'll have a new game week. That'll be game week 31, where we'll see a lot of fixtures, a full round of fixtures in game week 31 in the midweek, followed by the following weekend, which is then we'll move to game week 32. So we've seen this a couple of times. You see this a lot in December, where we'll have midweek fixtures. So we've seen it before. It's going to happen again. Game week 30 and 31, two deadlines that are going to be very, very close together, because the midweek slot, well, it is its own individual game week, and that's game week 31. And finally, game week 38, there's going to be no opportunities for double game weeks here either, because it is the end of the season. As soon as the fixtures are complete at the weekend for game week 38 on the Sunday, well, that's the season over. The Premier League season will end. There is going to be no midweek slot for game week 38. There is no such thing. The season is done. Now, technically, in very, very rare and unique circumstances, you could play games after game week 38 has concluded, but it's just such a low chance of happening. It's not even really worth thinking about. So, yeah, game week 38 is going to signal the end of the season, which we know. Game weeks, the FPL season lasts 38 game weeks. What more can we say? So with those couple of game weeks highlighted, we need to start adding more information. We need to talk about cups and where, therefore, our blanks and doubles are going to be. So let's start doing that with double game week 25, because we already know about this one. We can throw this one on the calendar straight away. Manchester City and Brentford will have a double game week in this week. Manchester City will play against Chelsea and Brentford will play against Liverpool and then Man City. So Man City versus Brentford, that has already been scheduled in for the midweek for game week 25. We know about this double. We've got to figure out now where the ones that haven't officially been announced, where are they going to be? Well, first of all, blank game week 26. We know this is going to happen. This is going to 100% be a blank game week. At least there's 100% going to be a fixture moved from that weekend slot, because it's going to be a case of who makes it to the EFL Cup final or the Carabao Cup final, depending on if you want to use the sponsorship name of the tournament. But the EFL Cup final will take place during the weekend of game week 26. Now, there is currently 4 teams that could potentially make it to this final, because the semi-finals have not completed. We've had the first leg of the semi-finals complete already. We'll find out before the game week 22 deadline who those 2 finalists are going to be, but the most likely answer is going to be that Liverpool beat Fulham in their semi-final. They're already up in that game, and Chelsea more than likely are going to come back against Middlesbrough and go through to the final as well. We don't know that for sure, of course, but there is a very good chance that Chelsea go through. We don't need to speculate on that too much right now because we're going to have the answers by the time we get to the deadline, which is why we do need to make follow-up videos to this one. As we get more and more answers, we get to kind of actually know who's going to be blanking, actually know who's going to be doubling. But right now, I think it's safe to assume that that there is a good chance that Liverpool and Chelsea will make it to the EFL Cup final, which means that team, so Liverpool and Chelsea, and their opponents from Game Week 26, both of those fixtures will be postponed. So Liverpool will blank, Luton will blank, Chelsea will blank, and Chelsea's opposition, Spurs, will blank. So if that's the case, you're going to see three teams that we have a lot of players from, Liverpool, Chelsea, and Spurs, will all have no fixture for Game Week 26, and that is quite troublesome. That is quite troubling, isn't it? So definitely something to keep an eye on. I would advise, you know, at least until the Game Week 22 deadline where we know what's going on, to not bring in too many Liverpool, Chelsea, or Spurs players. After the Game Week 22 deadline, well, we'll either know who's going to be in that final. If we know that it is going to be Liverpool and Chelsea in that final, then again, we need to just make sure we are trying to avoid particularly Chelsea and Spurs players for the next few game weeks, selling them where possible as well, to be fair. So yeah, blank game week for a few teams, at least 2 teams in Game Week 26. With the EFL Cup final out the way, we need to talk about the FA Cup. So first of all, the first key date here is the FA Cup round of 16. That is going to be in the midweek slot of Game Week 26. So during the midweek, we are going to see FA Cup fixtures. So any team who is playing in the FA Cup by the time we get to the round of 16, who is in the Premier League, plus whoever their opponent was meant to be in Game Week 26, are going to be, you know, playing in that midweek slot in Game Week 26. They won't be blanking because it's only midweek, but, you know, it does mean that they are unavailable to play in that midweek slot. They can still play at the weekend, just not in the midweek. That moves us on to Game Week 29, where the FA Cup takes place at the same time as the Premier League. At the same time as the Premier League. So, any team that is playing in the FA Cup quarterfinals and their opponents from Game Week 29, those fixtures are going to be postponed, suspended. They will not happen in Game Week 29, leaving a lot of blanks. And we're going to see Game Week 29 as the biggest blank, because you can imagine in the quarterfinals, we're probably going to see several teams. We're going to see 5, 6 teams at least in the quarterfinals for the FA Cup. We could even see 8 Premier League teams, technically, couldn't we? But yeah, I don't know how likely that is, given how the rounds have been going so far, but still. We can see a lot of teams in the FA Cup quarterfinals, and again, whoever they're playing will also be blanking in Game Week 29. And this is a little bit more complicated because teams, if they can't play it in the weekend of 29, well, it's not like you can move their fixture to the midweek slot because all teams are going off to international duty. So therefore, it's going to be a big blank. We could see like a maximum of 16 teams that do not have a fixture in Game Week 29. Now, in reality, it's not going to be anywhere near that high. I would say cautiously that we might see 10 teams blank in Game Week 29, and that will be our biggest blank game week of the season. Now, Game Week 34 is not going to be quite severe. We're going to see obviously a maximum of 4 teams in the FA Cup semi-finals from the Premier League, plus their opponents, another 4 teams at maximum. You know, we are probably not going to get as many as 8 teams blanking. We could see something a little bit more like, 5 or 6 teams again, 5 or 6 teams blanking, something a little bit less like that. So it's going to be less so, it's, a smaller blank game week than 29, but it's still going to be a blank game week. And particularly in the FA Cup, you think the big teams are probably going to make it through the furthest. Your Manchester Cities, your Manchester Uniteds maybe, your Liverpools, of course. It won't be Arsenal because they are already out. But you're going to have a few big teams very advanced in the FA Cup tournament. And that is going to mean that some of the big teams are going to be blanking in Game Week 34, which is a problem. And these teams, these fixtures, do have to go somewhere. But before we place where all of these postponed fixtures we're talking about, they have to go somewhere. But there are some positions where they maybe can't go or are less likely to go. And that has a lot to do with the European competitions, the UEFA competitions. We're talking Conference League, Europa League, and Champions League. These are all of the midweek slots that will be taken up by European fixtures. So obviously European fixtures take place in the midweek slots, starting from game week 24, 25, 27, 28, 32, 33, 35, and 36. That is where you're going to see all of the rounds of that. Now, in the earlier weeks, there's less pressure from the Premier League to avoid scheduling conflicts, but in general, the Premier League and the Champions League, particularly in the later stages of the competition, they don't like to happen at the same time. They like to try and keep them as separate as they can. So, in general, there is a preference towards not scheduling double game weeks, particularly in the later stages of the European competitions. It's not even going to be an option for teams who are advancing these competitions, because if Liverpool make it all the way to the final of the Europa League, well, they can't play in they can't have any double game weeks in any of these European slots, right? Aside from some of the earlier ones where, because some teams play and half of the teams play in one week, half the teams play in the other week. Yeah, it's kind of complicated, but we won't go into too much detail on that one. But certainly in the later stages, if Liverpool make it far, if Manchester City make it far, etc., Aston Villa, whoever else, if they make it far in their European competitions, well, these midweek slots are just off limits to them. They can't double in these weeks. So when can they double? When can teams double? When are teams most likely to double? Well, there's only two choices. These are the free slots, if you like, and it's game week 34 and 37. These are the blank slots. There's no European competition, there's no cup competition scheduled for this midweek slots, so it makes a lot of sense for these 2 game weeks to contain double game weeks for Premier League sides. Now, the first one is very interesting because in game week 34, not only do we have teams potentially blanking because of the semi-final clashes, fixture clashes, cup clashes, scheduling clashes, that means that some of those teams who are meant to play at the weekend might just have their fixtures moved to the midweek slot in Game Week 34. But because it is such a free slot in Game Week 34, well, a lot of fixtures need to go in here. So that's going to be our big double game week of the season. A lot of teams are going to be playing twice in Game Week 34. Some teams might not play at all, and some teams might play once as well. But in general, generally speaking, a lot of the teams who have blanked in Game Week 29 will have their blanking fixtures moved from Game Week 29 into Game Week 34. That's how it's going to work a lot of the time. It's going to probably get a little bit more difficult with the likes of Chelsea and Spurs if both of them blank in 26, because they're going to have to go in somewhere as well. But in general, 34 looks like a really, really good opportunity to move some of those blank fixtures from 26 and 29 into the 34 midweek slot. We've got one more opportunity, one more big opportunity at least for a double game week, and that's going to be game week 37. As usually, the late double game week is the smaller of the two of these 2 major double game weeks that we're going to see this season. Mostly because in an ideal world for the Premier League, they would like to get those unscheduled fixtures booked into the calendar as earlier in the season as possible, because say for example, let's say Liverpool, they have one unscheduled fixture by game week 34. That one fixture is going to need to go into game week 37. So their unscheduled fixture that they maybe have by game week 34, they will have to move that to game week 37, assuming they're in other European competitions. But then what happens if suddenly, oh no, Liverpool have another random game postponed for some disaster that happens in game week 35 and 36, and there's only one more slot for their postponed fixture to go in, which is 37. Now, where you're going to put that additional fixture, you don't know. So that's why we do see a tendency for the Premier League to try and book in the double game weeks earlier in the season if possible. And 37, yes, it is a valid double game week slot, but it's kind of used as your last opportunity to schedule those double game week fixtures in. They prefer to do them earlier on in the season if possible. So 37 won't be as big as, say, a 34, because you get them in nice and early in game week 34. And then game week 37, for many teams, is going to be like an emergency double game week opportunity. An emergency opportunity to place an unscheduled fixture in that week. Now, we did just mention Liverpool, and this is a real key thing, because Liverpool are pretty much, well, they're obviously favourites for the Europa League. They are favourites for the EFL Cup. We really think that they are going to make the EFL Cup final, and also they're second favourites to win the FA Cup as well. So we're expecting them to go far in all of these cup competitions, and if so, well, where are they going to play their double game weeks? If they already are going to have a fixture like postponed from game week 26, that's the Luton Town game, right? If that game is postponed, where is it going to go? Because they might also blank in 29. They might also blank in 34. Their fixture has to go somewhere. And that's why you might have heard a lot of people say this already, that Liverpool versus Luton Town, which would maybe be played in game week 26, is going to move to game week 25. Because it has to go somewhere. It's really difficult to schedule it in later on in the season if Liverpool do keep winning their games in all cup competitions. So therefore, it is safest to do the same thing as they did with Man City and just get it scheduled in for game week 25. Now, we will know about this, I hope, before the game week 22 deadline. Again, because I do think that as soon as Liverpool go through to the League Cup final, which, you know, respectfully, Fulham fans, I think we acknowledge is the most likely outcome at this stage. Well, we're probably going to see Liverpool have a double game week 25. And I think it is safe at this point to assume that Liverpool and Luton will also have a double game week in game week 25 because of those reasons. I think that is the one we can probably be most confident in out of everything, every possibility so far. So we've got our calendar, we've got our schedule, we know roughly what is going to be happening. Well, now let's talk about chips. We know the schedules, we know where the blanks are, we know the doubles are. We need to talk about chips. But just as a quick recap, guys, game week 25, mini double game week. Probably City, Brentford, Liverpool, Luton in there. For 26, mini blank game week. Most likely ones you need to worry about are going to be Liverpool, Chelsea and Spurs. Blank game week 29, difficult to say who is going to be blanking, but it's going to be a lot of teams. That moves us on to game week 34, which is the interesting one because we could see teams blanking, fixtures just suspended, moved just a couple of days later, and also more teams doubling. So we're going to have blank game weeks, single game weeks, and double game weeks all involved in game week 34. It's going to be crazy, it's going to be wild, but it's going to be fun. And double game week 37 to finish us off, very close to the end of the season. Just going to be a straight up plain double game week, no blanks. But many teams playing single fixtures, but many teams also playing double game week fixtures. Let's talk about chips. So first of all, let's talk about the free hit chip and when are the best times to use it. Now, typically, you would use your free hit chip when there is a blank game week that your team is not set up for, or if there's a double game week that your team is not set up for. So, for example, in game week 25, if we think City and Liverpool are going to double in 25 and you have no Liverpool or City players in your team, or very few, then play your free hit chip. You can get a maximum amount of double game week players from those fixtures. The other opportunity is if we've got a blank game week. So we already know sort of game week 29, game week 26, probably going to be some blanks in there. You might find yourself with a very, very thin squad because a lot of your players won't have fixtures and will be blanking that week. And therefore, you know, maybe that's going to be a time to use a free hit. But in general, guys, and I put this as number 3 and also in the note, a free hit chip is typically best used on a blank game week or a double game week where switching between wildly different desired teams is difficult to do using transfers alone. And we can talk about that going back to the calendar. So, for example, I've put on screen probably like the best times to use a free hit, and it's just going to be those blank game weeks and those double game weeks. Those are probably going to be the best opportunities to use a free hit. And there's kind of 2 ways of going about this, but in general, you know, if we look at 25, if Liverpool double in 25, but then blank in 26, well, you're going to want loads of Liverpool players for 25, but you're not going to want any for 26, which is kind of difficult, right? How are you going to switch your team rapidly between a team full of Liverpool players and a team with no Liverpool players? How are you going to do that so quickly in back-to-back game weeks? Well, you can't do that on transfers. You know, you're talking about taking big hits. You can maybe use your wild card to do that, but a free hit does kind of solve this situation. So you can use your free hit in 25 and have no Liverpool players in your normal team, or you can use your free hit in game of 26, which means if you do have loads of Liverpool players in your normal team, in your free hit team, you're going to bring them all in for that game week. Remove them all, sorry. You have loads of them and you remove them for game of 26. If you have loads of them in your normal team, get rid of them for game of 26 because they're blanking, and it doesn't matter if they're blanking because in your free hit team, they're gone. They're gone. And you get them straight back in for game week 27. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Although it should be said, I think Liverpool more than likely will also blank in 29, which adds another another problem. But yeah, so 25, 26, good opportunities to free hit. 29, if you find yourself in a situation, maybe you plan for this, maybe you don't plan for this, but if you find yourself in a situation where You don't have very many players with fixtures for Game Week 29. A Game Week 29 free hit works. 34 is the most interesting one to me, because if we see some teams blanking and some teams also doubling in 34, then maybe that's going to be a good opportunity to remove the blanking players and add players who are doubling at the same time. So you kind of get the advantages of both ends. Although I have to admit to you guys, I do think a lot of the teams that will be blanking at the weekend will have their fixtures unblanked by just moving their weekend fixture to the midweek slot instead. So I don't actually know if we'll end up seeing any blanks in 34, but we might. It remains to be seen. It's going to depend on a lot of things, of course. But yeah, 34 is definitely super interesting from free hit. And finally, 37. You know, if you want to load up on those double game week players in game week 37, maybe they're players you don't want to own long term, but they have nice double game weeks in 37, then hey, maybe you can free hit there. Bench boost is a little bit different. So a bench boost you would kind of typically use when your bench is full of double game week players. In an ideal world, if you have a squad full of double game week players, a lot of those players are going to be on your bench. You want to take advantage of them, then go for that. When your bench players, particularly those defenders, have great fixtures. So typically, guys, your bench is going to be full of defenders. If you're playing with like a 3-4-3 formation or a 3-5-2 formation, then you're gonna have 2 defenders on your bench. So if your defenders who you would normally bench actually have quite nice fixtures, particularly double game weeks, then yeah, that is a good opportunity to bench boost. And also when you just have multiple benching dilemmas, like, you know, guys, those game weeks where you've got like 2 players on your bench who you think, oh, I really kind of wish I could play them this week, but I can't play everyone. Maybe that's going to be an opportunity for a bench boost. I'll put a note here at the bottom. Typically, the bench boost is at its most powerful when used on a double game week with a bench full of multiple nailed-on double game week players. You may need to wildcard to set this situation up to make sure you do have lots of double game week players on your bench. You might be able to do it from transfers. You might prefer to do it on a wild card. There is no right answer here. You will hear a lot of people say, oh, you have to wild card either directly before or directly after a bench boost. I don't really subscribe to this idea. I think it is a really helpful way, but it's definitely not the only way to do it. So bench boost weeks are pretty simple. Right now, I would just be looking at the double game weeks. And the biggest double game weeks that we know about for the rest of the season are going to be 25, 34, and 37. These are going to be the biggest double game weeks of the rest of the season. Most likely, we could see some other random or double or blank game weeks pop up. You never fully know. Particularly double game weeks, we could see the odd one in game week 27 or 28. Maybe even game week 26. We could see a few of them in 26, 27, 28. Just like the odd team have a double, like a random double game week. But the real key important ones are going to be 25 to a degree. It's only a few teams doubling there. There'll be bigger ones in 34 and 37. So really, we're looking at 34 and 37 for a bench boost. I will go one step further and possibly even say that 37 is the one, because if you even have one blanking player in game week 34, if only one team is blanking in game week 34, well, I guess it would have to be 2, but not technically. But yeah, okay, so if one or 2 teams are blanking, you have one player from those teams, then you're going to want to bench that player who's blanking in 34. You're not going to want to bench boost them if you're benching a blanking player, right? So 37 stands out a lot as the bench boost week. So I'll put that one out there. Right now, at this moment, game week 37 looks like the best game week to bench boost this season, but it's not going to be the only answer. Triple captain is a little bit easier to talk about and to think about. So you would use your triple captain when a typically high scoring player has a double game week with 2 great fixtures. You know, if you've got a Salah, a Haaland, a Son, someone like that, they've got a really nice double game week. That is the time to use your triple captain chip. Also, when a typically high-scoring player has just a double game week in general, so say we got a Haaland and he plays 1 easy fixture and 1 difficult fixture. Well, hey, it's not perfect, but still, you're going to get 2 opportunities to get FPL points. And finally, number 3. You could just use your triple captain chip on a single game week, I guess, if you are particularly confident in your captain. So, you know, maybe a Haaland plays against a Burnley or a Sheffield United or something like that, and you think this is a really nice fixture for this player, I'm going to go for that. But what I would say, guys, is I really do recommend you use a triple captain chip on a double game week, because when we're looking at the, you know, maximizing your opportunity to score points, people think, oh, a double game week, a player has double the opportunity to score goals and get assists. But it's so much more than that, because you're going to get 2 extra points. If it's a nailed on player, you know, they're going to get 2 extra points just for playing in that second fixture. And more importantly, 2 opportunities for bonus points. On a single game week, a player only has a maximum of 3 bonus points in a game. In a double game week, a player can get 6 bonus points maximum because they've got 2 opportunities to get bonus points. So the avenues to points is more than just extra goals and extra assists. It's also extra points for playing, extra points for bonus, you know, extra points for clean sheets as well, if you want to add that one in there as well. So the double game week really is the time to triple captain, in my opinion. I put a note on here, guys, that the triple captain chip is the weakest chip. It is. It typically won't score you as many points as the other chips. It cannot be used in combination with other chips. You can't combine it or chain it or use it, you know, try and improve your chances of a good triple captain by using a free hit the week before or anything like that. It's not as easy. It's not really something that you would do. And it's also a chip most dependent on luck because you need your captain that week basically to do really well, and you can pick your favorite captain. You can't guarantee that they'll score you points, so there is less strategy involved in using the triple captain. Bringing the calendar back up, 25, 34, 37, the 3 double game weeks that we know about right now. Those are going to be your opportunities for a triple captain. Now the one caveat here is you don't want the triple captain to get in the way of other chips. If you want to bench boost in 37, well, you can't triple captain then, so you can't triple captain 37 because you're bench boosting there. If you are then saying, I want a free hit in game week 34, well, okay, then I can't triple captain then either, which leaves you with 1 double game week left, which is 25. So that is something you need to think about. If you are planning on using your bench boost and free hit chips in those double game weeks later down the line in the season, you really are limited to where you're going to be able to use your triple captain chip. And it's most likely going to be 25 is the answer to you. So right now, guys, when I'm looking at triple captain opportunities, I'm thinking game week 25. I'm thinking game week 25 looks the best. We're talking Man City playing against Chelsea and Brentford. So Erling Haaland with Chelsea and Brentford. That looks really nice. And we're talking about Liverpool, Mo Salah against Brentford and Luton. Nice fixtures. Nice fixtures indeed. So straight away, 25 is the game week I've got my eye on for that triple captain chip. And finally, the wildcard. Some of you guys will have used it already in Game Week 21, but if you've still got that, then I would say that the wildcard can be used when you think you have a terrible team. Now, you might have intentionally made your team terrible. You know, for example, maybe you've got like a blank game week coming up for Liverpool, and you've removed all of your Liverpool players, but after the blank game week, you kind of want those Liverpool players back. And it's difficult to do that with transfers alone. So you bring them all back in using a wild card, and you pivot quickly from a terrible team that might be terrible by design back to a really nice team. Opportunity 2 is kind of to set your team up for future double and blank game weeks. If you know you've got a lot of players who are blanking soon, you can use a wildcard to get rid of them all. Maybe you can use a combination of that and double game week players. So, you know, use your wildcard, remove all the players who have a lot of blanks soon, bring in a load of players who have a lot of double soon. Make sure you have cover for the players who are blanking in those game weeks. Use your wildcard like that. And also, of course, shortly before a double game week to set up a bench boost. That is something that a lot of people talk about. You can also go the other way. You can use your wildcard after the bench boost to remove all of the value on your bench, if you like. So spend more on your starting 11 because maybe you don't need your bench to be very strong after you've used your bench boost, if that makes sense. And I've got at the end a little note here. The wildcard chip is the most powerful chip. In an ideal situation, you will be able to use it in combination with other chips, chaining your chips to increase their power. That is a real key thing that we want to be trying to do. And that's why using your wild card kind of frivolously is not ideal. Sometimes you've got to use that wild card, but ideally try and save it for the right opportunity. And if your team is not perfect, can you fix it with a hit or 2 rather than use your wild card? If so, maybe that's your answer. The wild card is about making wholesale changes to your team and using that to take advantage of blank and double game weeks. So that's something we want to think about, particularly, you know, setting up bench boosts, you know, thinking about when your free hit's going to be. Can your wildcard team be one team and then your free hit team be a very different team for that one game week that you use the free hit? You know, that kind of thing. So Game Week 22 stands out to me as an opportunity for a wildcard because by the time we hit the Game Week 22 deadline, and that's this game week, by the way, we are going to have so much information. We're going to have a good idea of who is going to be blanking and doubling slightly later on in the season, and it could give us some answers that if you are desperate to use the wildcard, then maybe that is going to be the opportunity. But honestly, guys, we could go all over the place with the wildcard. I mean, if you've sold all of your Asia Cup, AFCON players and you want to bring them back in Game Week 25, I mean, hey, maybe you could throw your wildcard in Game Week 25, use it then. You could make a wildcard in Game Week 30 directly after the big blank. I kind of like the idea of this one. So for this kind of strategy for your wildcard, what you'd be doing is between Game Week 25 and 29, well, really after Game Week 25, you will be looking to slowly sell all of your players who you think are going to blank in Game Week 29. By the Game Week 27 deadline, we will know who is going to be blanking in Game Week 29. So we can start, you know, thinking about which players we need to start removing. And you'll have a couple of transfers, maybe try and save some transfers to start removing players who blank in 29. But they could be Man City players. They could be, you know, Liverpool players, you know, Spurs players. Really nice players that you actually would like to have long term. So you remove them all in the build up to Game Week 29, ready for them to not have a fixture anyway. You have a full set of 11 players in Game Week 29 ready to play, and then you wildcard all of those blanking players back into your team ready for Game Week 30 or 31, because in 30 Arsenal play against Man City, and that's a reason why a lot of people will be wildcarding in 31 rather than 30. But actually, I'm kind of eyeing up, personally, I'm eyeing up 30 as a potential wildcard team. So, you know, selling those blanking players ahead of 29, bringing them back in with a wildcard in Game Week 30. Game Week 33 is also a wildcard opportunity if you feel like bench boosting in 34, and wildcard in 36 could be a good opportunity if you want to kind of do a bench boost in 37. So there's loads of options for your wildcard. There's not really one right answer for this one. But the key is to think about when are you going to be bench boosting, when are you going to be free hitting, and then after that, you figure out when do I need to wildcard in order to make the most of my free hit and my bench boost. For example, if you're free hitting in Game Week 29, well, you definitely don't need a wildcard in Game Week 30 or 31, for example. You can actually wildcard before if you want to. So, yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. So, let's finish off this video with a strategy that I like the look of the most at this moment that I think a lot of you guys will like too. So, if you've got all your chips, like me, this is maybe the kind of strategy we're eyeing up at the moment. So, Game Week 25, triple captain on Salah or Haaland. One of those two players looking to triple captain them for their double game weeks. Triple captain Haaland against Chelsea and Brentford, or triple captain Salah against Brentford and Luton. An opportunity, a nice opportunity for a triple captain. The good thing about this double game week is it's a small double game week, so you probably wouldn't want a free hit or bench boost in this game week necessarily. But it's got the right teams. It's got the right teams doubling. So, hey, that could be a nice opportunity there. We would then go to wildcard in Game Week 30, like I said. So, after Game Week 25, we'll start thinking about removing some of the players who blank in 29. And after they've blanked in 29, we can bring them back in using the wildcard in 30 and set our team up as a really nice, strong team for the final run of the season. So have that nice wildcard, fresh team ready for this final run of fixtures. Nice. We'll probably know about doubles and blanks by this point as well, which is really, really nice. We can start getting in those right players. Then we'd look to maybe free hit in 34, because I think some of the big teams probably unlikely to double in 34, which is going to be problematic. I think a lot of the smaller teams actually will be the teams more likely to have double game weeks in 34. So therefore, Game Week 34 might be one of those game weeks where you want to have a lot of players who you wouldn't typically own in FPL. A lot of nice one-week punts just because they have double game weeks. That might be quite nice for 34, because remember, the FA Cup kind of screws things up for some of the bigger teams having a double game week here. And therefore, 37, would that be our bench boost week? I think so. So this could go either way. You could bench boost in 34 and free hit in 37. I think by the time we know about the fixtures, we'll probably have a better idea of which one's going to go where. But free hit in 34, I've put here provisionally, and a bench boost in 37. Obviously, using a wildcard in 30, we'll have an idea. But really, for Game Week 37, we've got a lot of time between Game Week 30 wildcard and Game Week 37 to start slowly improving our bench. If you need a hit to do that, you need a hit to do that. Slowly improve that bench, ready for 37. Targeting players who still have a lot to play for, who won't be rotated as much. We don't see too much rotation in 37. We see more rotation in 38. There might be a little bit of rotation in 37 for those teams who are kind of settled in the Premier League already, on the beach, if you like. But it is one to keep an eye on. So yeah, bench boost 37. That or free hit in 37. I think it'll be one or the other. Until we know exactly who's going to be blanking and who's going to be doubling, it's difficult to say right now. But 34, 37, one's a free hit week, the other's a bench boost week, in my personal opinion. This is kind of the rough strategy that I'm looking at right now. And it involves a triple captain pretty soon. So excited about that one, to say the least. So yeah, guys, there you go. That is the calendar between Gameweek 22 and 38 of all of the double and blank game week slots that we know of right now. There will be more information to come, guys, so make sure you are subscribing to the channel to keep an eye on us updating this with precise fixtures. Then we can even further narrow down our chip strategies and really figure out what is going on. We've got a nice basic overview right now, which I think is really helpful. Hopefully it's helpful for you guys too. Hopefully you've enjoyed this slightly longer video, but it is important that we do get a good lay of the land. If you wouldn't mind dropping a like on this video, that would be massively appreciated. Like I say, a lot of work does go into these videos and trying to figure out what goes where, and more importantly, why. It's really important I know why everything is going where, just so I can explain it very well to you guys, and we just have a real clear idea of where everything's going to go, and trying to present it in a way that is easy to understand, easy to digest as well. I have cross-referenced my findings with the likes of Ben Krellin, for example, who is very good at this double game week and blank game week stuff, and I think we are mostly on the same page as to where everything's going to go. I think I noticed one thing in his kind of spreadsheet that I wasn't quite in agreement with, but I mean, hey, he knows more than me typically, but this is just from my findings, and yeah, of course, if you want to check out Ben Krellin stuff, I definitely do recommend doing so. But just want to make the point that this is just my findings. So if anything is wrong here, I'm the guy to blame for this one, nobody else, because yeah, this is based on my own research here. So yeah, guys, thank you again for watching. Make sure you are subscribed. We'll be back for more Game Week 22 FPL videos very soon. But until then, I will see you later next. Bye bye.